Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. I'm Stu Hardy, and for our first episode of 2025, Derek unfortunately cannot join us, but instead, we have another rugby content creator based in Canada, Seán Ryan. Seán, thank you for joining us this evening.
Oh, no, thank you for having me on. I'm delighted to be here.
Fantastic. So when we have these kind of interviews, we always start with similar questions. So the first one we always ask is, what got you started in rugby?
I would say like my family is mad about it. We kind of the Six Nations obviously is on the horizon, so back home it's like a big deal. And being Irish as well, it just is that thing. My brothers played it, I played it for a good bit, and as I said, the Six Nations has been a big contributor to it. So yeah.
All right, fantastic. And so your family obviously played like a big part of rugby, you know, when you were growing up and stuff. Did you ever get the chance to play? Did you play with your family, or was there someone else who was like influential when you played rugby?
Um, so my dad was probably the biggest influence. One of the reasons is he was the one to get me out of the bed in the mornings, especially if it was cold out and whatnot. Um, but yeah, no, he was a coach for one of the clubs in Cork. And my two brothers played till they were 18. I played up until 16. And most of my rugby was during high school or secondary school, as we call it back home.
Hmm.
Um, in terms of like influential people in terms of that, like my father was definitely one of them, the man himself. But there's a lot of players that I would think are like really influential into me getting into rugby and stuff like that. Ronan O'Gara being one of them. And any of the Irish team really, like especially like Stockdale from 2018, another one that just fascinated me.
Mm-hmm.
Aki at the moment is really good. So a lot of the Irish fellas that play and the Munster squad and stuff like that kind of pushed me to get into it. And as I said, it was a big part of myself growing up. So
All right. Well, my question to follow that was be who is someone that you love to see step or have stepped onto the pitch? Um, but seeing as you've already given a couple of answers to that, is there any player that you can see being like a rising star in the Irish team, especially as this is like a British and Irish Lions year? Do you think there's any Irish players that can put their hand up and get one of those famous jerseys for the tour to Australia?
it's kind of hard because of a few injuries. I would have said like Craig Casey would have been the ones to like join that squad and stuff like that, but with his injury, he's not going to be able to do it. It'd be kind of cool to see Sam Prendergast. He's been a big hype back home. Um, I'd be hoping Jack Crowley gets into the squad. He's one of my favorite tens at the moment. He's just unbelievable. Um, but yeah, that they'd be like the people I'd be thinking of. Think yeah, they'd be the people. Yeah.
All right, interesting. So I know we're talking about rugby, but part of your career and in fact your profile on social media includes radio, and you did have a career in radio in Ireland before coming to Canada. So what got you started in radio?
Well, like growing up, I'm massive into music and stuff like that. Being Irish, I love to talk and have a bit of a crack. And then I was also like a DJ as well in some of the smaller clubs back home. When I was like 15, 16, that kind of out. So kind of music was always kind of around me and stuff like that. So I thought like radio was probably the next kind of transition, I suppose, because that's where I thought life was going for me. Um, and then I got into radio and I started in a pirate radio station because when you're that young, none of the big stations want to put you in or whatnot. So I did that. It wasn't for me, but finished school and then I went to college for radio for 2 years. Um, Completed that and everything like that. And while I was in college, I won an S Media Award, which is a student media award, which is like in the entirety of Ireland. So I won Radio DJ of the Year 2019. And like as I said, it's all of Ireland, but we're competing against different colleges, universities, stuff like that. And it was actually the first time my college actually had somebody in competing for it. And it was crazy to kind of come back and showcase the trophy afterwards and be like, oh, this is all we did. And, being up in the Capitol, it was such a surreal moment. And then once that kind of happened and stuff like that, I got myself into a radio station locally in Cork called Red FM. I was doing essentially spinning, which is um, you're just at the desk and you're just like transitioning and fading and stuff like that at the desk while the a broadcaster is out and about if he's in like a shopping center or if he's at some festival or something like that. So kind of the outside broadcast kind of things, but you were stuck not where all the action was happening. And then I was given the opportunity then to promote have a weekend show then in the city over from me called Limerick. And yeah, I was on there and did a few shows there, and that's kind of where it all yeah.
All right. Well, congratulations on your victory for first time representing your college and getting the victory. Seems pretty cool. Now, I've been going through your social media and um, on Instagram, there's a lot of posts about an album called Nabbed, which is an album you released in 2019. What is the story behind that?
So like obviously I think it was originally on Spotify, but it's on YouTube now. So if anybody wants to listen to it, they can have a look and try and figure it out. But I was going out with somebody at the time, and we had like this big breakup or whatever, and kind of was I was at that age of trying to like figure out my emotions and stuff like that. And the best way for me was writing stuff down and then trying to make a creative outlet for it. Um, so that was kind of the premise for the album. There's a few jokey songs in there as well, but yeah, it was just kind of something I just did. It was just something I did. And yeah, it was just something small, but people do reference it every so often, and the effort I put into it. So I was like, have those clips up there. It's a part of me at this stage. So yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, I did try and find it on Spotify, but it's all been blocked out. So I'll have to. So anyone who's listening to this and wants to hear Nabbed, I guess you have to go onto YouTube and find it.
It's
Uh,
nothing too fancy, by the way. It's nothing crazy. Like,
eh, it's all right. Now, and speaking of like musical influences and stuff like that, I saw that you in 2020 or 2021, you set up Irish Rap Zone to highlight and support Irish rap. And you did develop a following on Instagram of over 1,000 followers. So, how influential has rap been in your music and radio career, both as a artist when it came to compiling Nabbed and as a listener in general?
it's definitely like helped me kind of express some of the emotions felt, as I said, kind of with the album. Um, it was just kind of a way of expressing myself really, and it just kind of makes me understand different emotions. I suppose rap can be quite a an aggressive genre and stuff, so it kind of able to help with those kind of anger emotions and being able to kind of just understand what I'm actually thinking and understanding what I'm saying and stuff. So that's kind of how it's helped me. But like music in general has always been kind of the big help for a lot of different challenges that I faced through my 26 years of being in being in this world.
All right. And was there any Irish rappers that really stood out for you whilst you were covering that for your page? Anyone that has since gone on to do bigger and bigger shows even in Ireland or even like across Europe or the world?
Yeah, one that springs to mind is Kneecap. They're pretty influential. They just had a movie come out recently as well.
Okay.
So they're a rap group from Northern Ireland. So it's UK, but it's Ireland to me. Um, but yeah, they came out with a movie. Their songs are kind of half in English, half in Irish.
All right.
So it's it's really kind of cool how they've been creative with the different dialects and stuff like that. And that's been one of the ones I've been like, this is really cool. There's a few other ones like Versatile who they kind of popped off around the time I was doing all that sort of stuff. So they were doing really well. They got like sponsorship with I think it was Lifestyle Sports, which is essentially like Sports Check or one of them. and doing
Okay.
ad commercials on TV and stuff like that. So there was a few that kind of spring to mind that were able to get kind of those deals, and it was really cool to see it.
All right. Interesting. Well, that's some of the stuff you did in Ireland, but in 2022, I believe you moved over to Canada. What made you decide to move to Toronto in 22?
Um, there's a few different reasons. I mean, Toronto's always been a place that I've wanted to go to. One of the main reasons was during my college time. Um, my lecturer had always talked about radio in Toronto being a big thing, like media hub and stuff like that, and a really cool place to kind of learn from. So that was kind
Hmm.
of one of the reasons that he had kind of mentioned it to me. Another reason was my father has always been a proud believer on exploring the world. Go somewhere. Go out somewhere outside Ireland. Like learn something different because it'll be enjoyable. He went to the UK when he was really young, and then he came back to Ireland, and he's been in Ireland ever since. But he's always been like the thought of, oh, to do that, but he's at an age now where he's not able to do all the young stuff. But he's always been a promoter of that, and even for my brother as well. And then when I was working in before, so COVID hit and stuff like that, so that's why he kind of stopped the radio side of things and being on Spin Southwest. Um, so I was working in hospitality, I was working in a hotel, and one of my colleagues then had informed me that he was moving to Toronto in the summer. And that kind of was like, okay, well, look, Toronto's always been kind of mentioned in those regards. I should just check out this place for myself. So then I moved over in the October of 2022.
Yeah, I have full experience of that. I moved over in September of 2018. So a few years before you, but I fully understand and I fully agree with needing to travel and see the world and move around and things like that. So I fully get where you're coming from. Um,
Yeah.
so in your first year of living in Toronto and Canada, what's one memory that has stood out for you the most?
There's been a lot. I mean, to pinpoint it down to one is kind of hard, but I suppose because like I've seen the Toronto Raptors play, I've seen the Blue Jays play, my parents coming over. There's some great memories, but I think the one that's going to stand out to me most is probably the journey getting over here. Especially with, I had to get up early. I left my two brothers at home. My mom and dad dropped me to the bus station, getting on the bus, whole emotional roller coaster heading up to the capital, which is a 3 hour bus ride to get to the airport. So being like in and out of being crying and whatnot. And then just getting to the airport and not knowing what I'm doing, kind of like, okay, I have to check this bag in, get to this, and the whole drama, everything. Making sure the visa's out, make sure I have all my documents, make sure my phone is charged, like so all that. And then landing in Toronto and realizing, okay, I don't have any internet because the internet in the airport wasn't working or I just couldn't get connected to it. And then trying to figure out how I was going to get to this Airbnb that I had booked for 2 weeks, and doing it all by myself. So I think that whole journey and then getting in the taxi and then just seeing everything, like the big city and go, oh my God, there's so much people here. One of the things that kind of stuck out when I was on the road to the B&B, was the fact that the population of Toronto is like more than the population in Ireland, or roughly around the same, that kind of way, which was like, oh my God, that's kind of like a whoa moment. But yeah, definitely just even landing on that first week and everything like that, trying to get myself sorted was definitely one of the memories that I think will stick to me for till Kingdom Come.
Mm, sounds pretty good. And what are the things you like the most about life in Canada so far?
Uh, First thing before I get myself in trouble, my girlfriend. That's the first one.
Correct
The
answer.
second,
Correct answer.
but no, the people have been fantastic. I think that's one of the main things that people are so nice and lovely and whatnot. And then as well, like I love the slang, like a double double. Like it's just so funny. I work in Tim Hortons, so that's like I just love hearing that phrase or the May 24 or 24. So I do love some of the slang and stuff like that. But yeah, it's the culture. It's just the possibilities that are here in the new world, I suppose. Only like in the last weekend I went tobogganing for the first time, and that was, obviously something silly and whatnot, but it was really cool to even do it because you wouldn't do it at home because there's not rarely any snow to be able to do that sort of thing. Um, so yeah, it's just been able to get those experiences, and the rugby community here in Canada have been so supportive of me. So yeah, it's just been everything really. It's just been really good. Although the cold can get a bit too cold, but that's another story.
That is another story. And one thing I say about Canadian girlfriends is they have the potential to become Canadian wives. So just keep that in mind.
I will, I will, I will.
Okay, so speaking of the rugby community since you've been over here, well, you moved in October of 2022, and you then have like a brief window of being able to see MLR games in Canada. Were you able to catch any of the Toronto Arrow season in 2023?
You're actually going to kill me for this. Essentially, I had planned to, because I like obviously the first couple of weeks is trying to get yourself sorted, find your community, find people to get along with, and that was very stressful. So it was always kind of like a thing to do. There was one time I was able to do it, but what had happened was I started seeing my girlfriend, and weekends were kind of I'm hanging out with her because I just got on with her so well. I'm living with her now, so that's that it's gone in the right direction. Um, so the opportunity just didn't arise for me, but I was like, oh, but there's always next year. There's always next year,
Mm,
and we know how that story went. So
yeah,
that
and
was kind of my first out.
yeah, in all fairness, we all thought there would be a next year, but obviously the hands of fate decided otherwise. Um, but that just because there aren't any MLR games taking place in Canada, that doesn't mean there aren't any rugby games taking place in Toronto at all. I've seen on social media you've been to a number of games in um since you arrived, so across 23 and 2024. Um, from your knowledge of Irish rugby and
Okay.
now coming to see how the game is played in Toronto, what would you say is like your current assessment of rugby in Toronto or the GTA or Ontario?
In terms of, I mean, you can't really compare the two in a sense because you have Ireland who are I think we're number two in the world right now, and Canada are we're I think we're not even in the top 20 if I'm not mistaken, 22 or something
No, but
if I'm not
I
mistaken.
mean more on like a club level, not on a national level.
Okay, but it kind of trickles down is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Um, I think the direction in terms of Ontario itself, I'm not too sure about the other provinces and stuff like that, but that's kind of one of my objectives for this year to kind of touch base with them. Um, but I do think, from what I'm hearing, there's like it's going in the positive direction. It's obviously been from going to games and talking to people, they've said like it's on the downhill. It's not going the way it's
Yeah.
gone. But I feel like even just hearing, because Rugby Ontario get on contact with me because obviously I'm promoting the scene and whatnot. And the presidents will talk to me and stuff like that if stuff is going down, so I get the information as quickly as possible. Um, but I think they're in a positive direction. They just need to make sure there might be some difficult decisions to make, whether it's, we just heard recently that the Bytown Blues, which is based in Ontario or in Ottawa, sorry, they're going to be part of the Marshall League, which is massive news. But they could have a game against the Sarnia Saints, which is on the other side, which is,
Oh,
as you
wow.
might know, a 7 hour journey, and it could be only just one game. So there's those kind of difficulties, and then I've heard that they want to shorten the season is another thing,
Mm.
due to the fact that the season kind of runs into the college season, like, so the
Yeah.
McCormick Cup, which is the big cup that happens here, um to have that while the college season is just starting or getting their first few games, there's a bit of a clash. So they want to shorten the season, which I'm not too sure if they should do it or not, but that's up to them to decide. So they do have some difficult decisions to make and how they fix it out. But if they do it right, I think it could be a good year. And I also think that they need to do one of the big things is that they need to do a lot more marketing in terms of it. Because when I started like looking into Toronto rugby, even trying to find leaderboards or where games were happening, it was like I felt like it was the most cryptic thing going. Like I didn't
Yeah.
really understand what was. because like that's kind of why I got into it in the first place. Was I was like, well, there has to be rugby around because they have an okay national team. Probably, it should be better than what it is, but um, I was always kind of like curious on how like what is it and how what state it is in and like a lot of the clubs are doing okay. Like you got Bambi Beach, who are a really good team. You got the Harlequins. Some of the clubs have clubhouses and stuff like that, which is like a lot better than some other clubs who are just on a field that they rent out.
Yeah.
So there is positive steps. So they just need to, as I said, they need to market it. They need to make it dramatic. They need to like not as big as Demalora. Obviously, that's kind of the pro game, but they need to make it like this is a big deal. This is the Marshall League. This is the biggest thing that's happening here in Ontario besides the college and stuff like that while it's happening. So I do think that's that. And then but I think it's going in the right path. And I think, with the right people behind it and stuff like that, it can be a good season for Toronto and Ontario this week or this year.
Yeah, I think there's something, and it's not like exclusive to Toronto or Ontario or even to Canada. It seems like rugby as a sport has a communication problem of it doesn't want to promote and yet at the same time keeps asking, why aren't people paying attention? Why aren't people following? And I'm like, well, if you don't tell them, they're not going to know. And I understand that, this isn't just a simple thing as like, just do it. You have to get people in place. Then there's the big question of money and stuff. And that's what it always comes back to. And it's like, I know that in the Rugby Canada strategic plan up till 2029, they mentioned that they needed to improve their sponsorship program of like how to get sponsors on and how to get the proper financing they need. Now, that said, the men's national team do not have a front of shirt sponsor, so clearly something's not working on that regard. But then again, you look at like the women's team and it's the national team, the sevens team, the under 20s team, they all have separate sponsors. The money's coming in somewhere, and it's like, can you just get that model and move it over to the men's side? But again, it's something that is a process and it's going to take time. And hopefully, if Canadian men qualify for the Rugby World Cup this year, and I am like knocking wood, crossing everything in my mind that that actually happens, but that can really fix a hole that they're in. Speaking of the Marshall League, in July of last year, you stated that you had acquired 8 of the 16 jerseys of the teams in the Marshall League. So the big question is, have you now completed the collection? And if not, which teams are you missing?
So I actually had to think of which teams I had, but I think I have 11 at this moment in time. So I'm missing five, and two of those teams aren't going to be in the Marshall League this year. So I don't know if you want to count them. But they will be replaced by two others, which I know, which is going to be Markham and Bytown, and I know Markham are sending me a jersey sometime in the next couple of weeks, so that'll add to that'll be 12 then. But I'm missing Sarnia, Brampton was the other one. The Toronto Scottish, Vaughan, and Ajax are the five teams that I'm missing at for this season or last season just gone.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm just missing five of them. I do have like some of the smaller unions and stuff like that, like the Hamilton Hornets, and I have the Banshees from the Eastern Ontario Rugby Union. And I just got a Dragons one as well this year. And then I got my first out of Ontario jersey from Westmount, which is in Quebec. So that was really cool to kind of get one from there and be like, oh, okay, I'm reaching. So yeah, it's going in the right direction. But I'm hoping this year that we'll get closer to that 16 or at least get up to 14 anyway. So yeah.
Well, it seems like a great endeavor. I have a collection of rugby jerseys already, and the aforementioned Canadian wife is not a fan of my collection, so I have had to agree to not add to it at the moment. But if anyone would like to gift me one, because, if it's a gift, it's out of my hands. I didn't do it. It's okay. Someone sent it to me. Um, Feel free to leave a message and we'll get those details sorted out. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, it's a pretty good collection so far, and I'm looking to see. It all done. Speaking of rugby jerseys, every team has its own crest. And at the end of last year, you ran a competition for the best crest in Ontario, and you awarded it to London St. George. How was that entire experience? Because I remember you doing like a bracket system, so it was like 64 team logos. How did that all go?
Um, that was I honestly one of the craziest experience. I didn't think it would be as big as it got to. Like my whole objective with it was just to be kind of make the scene a bit more like we know these teams or whatever. Make them more aware. Um, but like we were getting like 800 people voting on each of these polls, which there was a lot of them on my story. And then going through round by round, it was nearly up to 1,000 people per story then. So there was a lot of traction and stuff like that, which was really cool to see those numbers and be like, whoa, this is surreal. Um, and then like even when we did the whole tournament and we did all the brackets and stuff like that, and it turned out London St. George won. The Hamilton Hornets reached out to me and were like, "Here, we came second place, but we'd love to have you at our 70th anniversary dinner." So me and Becca, my girlfriend, went down to Hamilton and we got to enjoy that experience. And it was kind of, I hadn't really covered. They're in the NRU, if I'm not mistaken. So I hadn't really covered that union or that kind of those videos yet. It was mainly just the Marshall League, and doing those predictions was the main stuff I did for the year. But it was really cool for them to be like, "Oh my God, that's the Crest guy. Oh my God, that's the guy. He did all that stuff." And the old boys be like, "Oh yeah, that's on that Instagram thing." So it was really cool to that. And then but it was shocking, like in terms of like people knowing me for that. And then it wasn't so like you could see on my Instagram if people check it out that there's a trophy and I'm with my girlfriend and we're presenting it and stuff like that to London St. George. But it actually I didn't have an intention to have a trophy or anything like that. It was just kind of like a small thing I was doing online, and that was about it. Um, but during the McCormick Cup final, so the tournament finished in the middle of September, and the McCormick Cup final was in the end of September, the last one happening at Fletcher's Field. Um, so they basically Simon from London St. George came up to me. He was like, "Oh, I'd love to have you at our end of year banquet." And I was like, "Oh, I'd be dying." He was like, "Yeah, you can present the trophy for that. We'll get it all done up. We'll make it up or whatever. You just come down, present it, give it to the president and stuff like that, and we'll have a night out of it." So yeah, I went down to London St. George. I met Simon. We stayed in his house, which was really cool and lovely to have that experience. Went to the banquet. The first thing was I was kind of nervous going into it, if I'll be honest with you, because as you know from if you know the logo, there's the English flag on it, and I was fearful being an Irish person being surrounded by a load of English flags inside. So I was like, "Oh God, now how is this going to turn out?" But we went inside and it was all full of Irish flags. I kid you not. It was all Irish flags. It was all this Guinness on tap as well, which was the most important thing. But the basically it was they had informed me that like before it used to be the Englishmen's club or whatever, in terms of like that they'd have the meeting of all the English people would meet and whatever, and they would gather together. And in recent time, it's been more of the Irish coming to the thing, so they've changed it into the Irish committee and stuff like that. So now all the flags have changed to Irish. It wasn't just because I was attending and they wanted me to feel comfortable. So it was kind of cool to kind of get that, and even the barman was Irish as well, so he was chatting away to me. And yeah, it was nerve-wracking. I had to create a speech and go up and present the word to the president of the London St. George. And yeah, it was just such a real, like, it was just so surreal. And like everybody knew who I was, like, "Oh, that's Seán," and he does the like, because I do prediction videos as well, so people know me for that, and they do know me for the crest. So that was really cool. And then we did the because that was so popular. I did another one in December for the entirety of Canada. So there was 64 for that. I think in the Ontario one it was 32. I don't think there's 64 teams, or I couldn't fit 64, so I did 32. So in
All
the
right.
Canada one there was 64, which I could have went to a bit more if I'll be honest with you, but I just said I'd stick with 64 because otherwise the graphic would look too squished. Um, so yeah, and they won that one as well. So they were, But we'll do that again in December, and we'll see if there's a difference because we'll have a lot more people involved and stuff like that, and hopefully the following gets a lot bigger.
All
So I'm looking
right, all
forward to that as
right.
well.
Sounds good. And yeah, glad you had a good time and glad it was well received. But speaking about the year ahead, what do you hope to achieve with rugby content in 2025?
Um, there's a lot. Like I do want to touch base. I'm going to be doing a bit on Six Nations as it's coming up and stuff like that. And I do want to touch with the MLR as well this year, because like we have Canadian players that play in it, so I might as well be covering that to some degree. I
Hmm.
do want to shine a bit more light to the Marshall League. There's been few of the presidents have kind of reached out to me, and some people have reached out to me about doing a kind of a separate Instagram account to be able to push the Marshall League because it's going to be a big year for them and stuff like that. So that's um that's one of the things that I'm kind of looking forward to do, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, just being able to kind of push more content, um, kind of have a jersey from each of the clubs and finish off the Marshall League collection. And then possibly maybe attend one of the a game outside of Ontario. That might be cool to do. And then most importantly, growing the sport. So in
Mm.
Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely understand that and agree with that, definitely. Let's have a look at I know we've said like what you want to achieve, but is there something big or different you want to achieve in 2025? It could be rugby content, it could be
Um,
non-rugby content.
God, I mean, I suppose one of the big things, and this is like a personal thing, I suppose, is to get my PR.
Mm,
That'd be the one to make sure I stay because at the moment um it's been a difficult. I did say I'm working at Tim Hortons, but at the moment my work permit has ran out, unfortunately. So I'm waiting for that to be renewed. It could be a couple of weeks, it could be a couple of months. So I'm in that kind of scenario at the moment. Um, so it's a bit of an interesting spot I'm in at the moment. So that's why I'm kind of pushing a bit more content than I usually would. Um, but it would be to get my PR and be able to that. It would also be get my license. I have a G1. I have to just do the test. So that's another thing I'd like to do. Get
hmm.
that and being able to drive to a few more of the games. Um, but yeah, and like even to um I don't know if there's going to be international games in Ottawa or in Toronto or anything like that, but I would love to kind of be able to see another one, especially when I went up for the Canada versus Scotland game, and it was a good time to go up, but you knew the outcome was going to be the way it
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
so it'd be kind of cool to see another one of them.
Yeah, I fully get that. Well, as someone who's been through the struggles of PR, I hope it comes through as soon as possible. Thanks, Sean, for joining us. And to all our listeners and viewers, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out more as well as our written pieces on our website, therougerugby.ca. You can also find our podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We have our YouTube channel at The Rouge Rugby. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell notification to stay up to date with all our videos. We're also available across social media, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads, all at The Rouge Rugby, as well as our Blue Sky account, which has been set up for the new year. So, Sean, where can people find you on social media?
So you can find me at Sean underscore Ryan underscore radio on most of the platforms. It's Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook as well, and they're the main babies at the moment. So those four are the ones that you need to get to. But mainly Instagram is the main one, and I do touch base on the TikTok. But I'm hoping to venture into a bit of YouTube this year. And on Facebook, it's mainly I have a Canada rugby scene group chat. So it's just talking about the Canada rugby scene. If you want to get in chat and join the group.
Oh, good. And you can find me across social media at Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. Well, that's where we're going to end this episode. Sean, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. We hope you can join us again next time.